He failed too many times. Ooh, that's a big one, right? Like, how many times have you failed to quit porn? Maybe when I die and I go to heaven, hopefully, right? And maybe I can just ask that question, like, what's the exact number I failed to quit? And maybe it's not important when you get to that stage, but it'd probably be a pretty high number of the times I committed myself and I promised myself this is the last time, and then I failed at it, right? And that can be really tough, guys. Like, that can be really hard. I think this lie becomes brutal after every relapse. When you're really trying and you really want to quit, like you have it in you, you're like, this isn't aligning with me and my values, but you still fail at it. Like, that's a brutal thing, right? You feel discouraged, you feel ashamed, tired of disappointing yourself. I know that feeling well. Heck. So I did a podcast and I did I think I might have done an article about it, but I had a relapse. Now it's a little over 9 months ago. I had a relapse. And that was really tough. Especially I think when you're doing a podcast where you're the porn free millennial, right? I think sometimes it puts a lot of pressure on myself. But hey, well, I signed up for this. But part of, doing this podcast and, doing this writing that I do is I'm just giving a real account for like what I'm going through in my life. Right. And I'm just being honest about it because I think that should be helpful for people because, people stumble, people trip up. And I think that can be a really discouraging thing too, because I think I was getting close to 2 years sober and I just, I went through a breakup. I was going through a relationship that was going pretty well, pretty promising. And it just ended up, not working out. And I think that was just a really tough thing. And I think sometimes when those moments happen, you lose track a little bit about all the good stuff that you've been doing, all the good habits. I travel too, like I'm in my RV. I do the RV life. Been doing that for 3 years, like working remote. And I think sometimes that's been a little bit tough too, just traveling and being in different areas and sometimes not feeling I have like a set routine in the day. Like that's a tough one. But yeah, I did a podcast about it. That was episode 51, which I put in the chat. And then I also did my other relapse that I had was a little bit earlier on in my podcast. That was December 22nd, 2023. And that's episode 9. That one's called Getting into the Ring. And that was like basically I've had 2 relapses since I've started my work and I've documented them because I think it's important. So number 9 of my podcast, Getting Back in the Ring, that was like the first time I did a relapse podcast, just talking through it. But yeah, I think there's seasons in our life where we just get exhausted by the cycle. We start wondering, what's the point of even trying anymore? I think that was definitely something I'd ask myself a lot, especially like when I was younger. I think too, kind of when I was in my marriage, and I just saw like, man, like I'm in the doghouse, feels like forever. Like why do I even try? And I think that voice of shame can become strangely seductive, right? The shame says you are a failure. Guilt is different, right? Guilt and shame are a little bit different. Guilt separates the action from the identity. Guilt says you failed, but you are still capable of becoming better. And I think when you fully identify as a failure, right? And I think shame, I'm going to try to do an upcoming episode with Vern Tomke, host of Finding Traction, my mentor and coach, about shame. So that's going to be a really good one. But shame for me has always just been a big shackle in my life. I think I internalized it really young. Second grade, I thought I was just going to go to hell for watching porn. And I just internalized that myself. And it started to become part of my identity. I think especially in my marriage, it just started to identify myself as a failure. And that can definitely make it harder to break that lie that we tell ourselves of, I've already failed too many times. Like, why even try? So hopelessness, it becomes its own twisted form of a comfortable prison, right? One where the pain welcomes it becomes a welcoming party. The host, the cook, the entertainment, the bedtime story. That's what the pain becomes. It's like everything in your life just feels like pain. One of the biggest shifts in recovery happened when I stopped seeing relapse as a proof that transformation was impossible. Instead, I began treating relapse like a detective treats a crime scene, carefully studying the patterns, triggers, emotional gaps, weak spots, unmet needs that led me there in the first place. I didn't aim to condemn myself as guilty, but this time, understand myself honestly to heal. I think progress is rarely clean, growth is rarely linear. Sometimes recovery looks like less of escaping a prison overnight and more like slowly discovering where the cracks in the walls are. You learn, you adapt, you strengthen weak spots, you keep going. That's what matters. And most of the strongest lessons I've learned about myself actually came right directly from failure, not before it. This is a really important point I want you to remember. Don't live in fear of the relapse. Don't live in the fear of failure. Fear can cripple even the strongest of us. Instead, live into an identity that is not prone to relapse, but also one resilient enough to quickly get back up after a stumble, slip, or fall. The goal is becoming someone who keeps getting back up in the pursuit of a life that they don't want to escape from. So sit with that, right? I mean, I'm here, a big part of what I talk about is being porn free, right? And I had a fall, I had a slip up 9 months ago. And like I said, it's more of just treating yourself with some grace. And I think a big part of that too is repenting, and a big part of that, right, for the Christian listeners, is repenting in the sins with people, that you trust, that you love. I think that's huge, right? And in life, right, we can't just live in fear of failure. And that's ultimately what it is. It's not even fear of relapse. I think it's just fear of failure. And that can hold a lot of us back, right? So let's sit with this a little bit. If you've relapsed recently and you're listening right now, hear me out. Failure is an event, it's not your identity. Don't become the judge, become the detective. Ask, what happened? What was I feeling? What can I learn from this? And I think recovery grows through that curiosity. I think shame keeps us stuck. Lies in prison, truth liberates. And that's how we start breaking free. So that's number 4, is I've failed too many times.